It was a moment Tyson Steele feared he might not live to see.
Kilo 3, you were partially 10 when I copied you arrived at the cabin.
His SOS in the snow finally spotted by state troopers after a devastating fire left him stranded in a remote part of Alaska.
Imagine being stranded in the middle of the Alaskan wilderness for 22 days. No roads, no contact, no supplies, just you, the bitter cold, and the will to survive. This is the story of Tyson Steele, a man who faced the unthinkable and lived to tell the story. It all began with a mistake, a single spark, a moment of carelessness that turned his entire world into an inferno. Tyson Steele, a 30-year-old homesteader from Utah, had been living alone in a remote cabin deep in the Alaskan wilderness. He was used to solitude. He had chosen this life, far from the noise of civilization, surrounded only by towering pines and the silent expanse of snow. Then one fateful December night, disaster struck. Steele had been trying to start a fire in his old wood stove. In his haste, he threw in a large piece of cardboard. A mistake he knew better than to make. A single spark shot up the chimney, landing on the plastic-coated roof of his cabin. He didn't realize it at first, but when fiery drips of molten plastic began falling from the ceiling, panic set in. He ran outside, hoping to gather snow to smother the flames, but it was already too late.
I didn't know it until I was going back to bed and plastic started dripping from the ceiling, and dripping like on fire, like dripping balls of fire. And I tried to put it out as fast as I could, but it spread so quickly that I realized I just got to grab a few things and get out of here. I got to grab my dog. The dog and survival gear, my first thought.
His cabin, the home he had bought and rebuilt, the shelter that protected him from the brutal Alaskan winter, was engulfed in flames. Steele grabbed what little he could, some coats, sleeping bags, a blanket, rushing outside, desperately calling for his dog, Phil, a 6-year-old chocolate lab, his best friend, his only companion. In the chaos, Steele thought Phil had escaped, but then he heard it, the howling, a heart-wrenching, soul-crushing cry coming from inside the inferno.
When I went back to grab my rifle, that I realized he was still in the house, and I tried to save him, but the flames spread like gasoline, and I couldn't get in there. And what he meant to me was everything. All the things that I was losing, I had no thoughts for. I'm losing all my stuff. I don't care. He was the thing I wanted to save.
Steele watched in helpless horror as flames consumed the cabin. Inside, the heat ignited his ammunition supply. Bullets exploded in rapid succession, turning the night into a war zone. His dog, his home, his survival gear, gone. He was alone, in the dead of winter, with nothing but the clothes on his back and a bag of whatever he had managed to grab. And now, the fight for survival began. The first night he built a snow cave, a small suffocating space barely big enough to move in, but it was warm, warmer than the unforgiving night air. For food, he salvaged what little he could, cans of food that had survived the fire, jars of peanut butter, even a can of pineapple. Despite being allergic, he ate it anyway. It was better than starving. Days passed, each one colder than the last. Steele knew that staying put meant death. He needed to be found. He needed to be seen. So he carved out a massive SOS in the snow, a last-ditch effort, a silent plea to the sky. And then he waited. On the 22nd day, hope arrived. An Alaska State Trooper helicopter scanning the wilderness spotted the message. Steele, weak and barely able to stand, waved his arms frantically as the chopper descended. As the rescue team approached, Steele's face was barely visible under layers of ice and exhaustion. He was alive. Against all odds, he had survived. He had faced the brutality of nature, the heartbreak of loss, and the cruel indifference of winter. And he lived to tell the story. Survival in the wild isn't just about skill, it's about resilience. The will to push forward, even when every part of you wants to give up. Tyson Steele proved that when faced with the impossible, the human spirit can endure.